right. So thank you everyone for joining this week's BDPA Tech and Career Talk. Again, I'm Devin Jenkins, our National Tech and Career Talk leader, technical product manager here at GE Healthcare in Milwaukee, working in supply chain analytics. You probably hear my trusty sidekick in the background, a little Emery. So she may pop in from time to time. But a little bit about BDPA for those who may be unfamiliar. Black Data Processing Associates. The organization started in 1975. And it has kind of two purposes. One is developing computer programming skills in our youth to make sure we're continuing to build a talent pipeline for the technology industry. And the other is serving as a forum and a vehicle for technology professionals to continue to develop in their careers. And our mantra is advancing careers from the classroom to the boardroom. So glad to have you here with us. We're excited for our conversation today with Raj Davis of Google. I'll let him give you a little bit of his spiel on his background and who he is and what makes him so special. But that is our talk for today. We're excited. With that, we'll jump right in. So Raj, we're glad to have you. How are you doing?
Hey man, doing very well. Thanks again for inviting me to speak with everyone. I'm very excited to share any insight or my experience for the benefit of others.
Well, awesome. A reminder to the group, feel free to leverage the chat throughout the conversation. If you have questions or thoughts and you don't want to forget them, you can put them in the chat and then we'll make sure we circle back to them towards the end. So that being said, Raj, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about what you do? What was your journey to get there?
Sure, man. I'm a senior, what we call a senior customer engineer with Google Cloud. And I work currently out of the healthcare and life sciences vertical. So I mainly deal with infrastructure, but I touch data, analytics, application modernization, all those type of things so far. So as you know, with the last couple of years of coronavirus and the pandemic and all those things, I actually get to see what it takes on the back end to support things like testing and things like that. A lot of my customers deal directly with when you go get a COVID test, what happens in the back end and how do you get a text message or an email saying that your test is complete and all those things. So, but prior to Google, I spent about 4 years with Amazon Web Services as a senior technical trainer and had a chance to teach all over the world, taught thousands and thousands of people the basics of clouds. Cloud, you could make it generic. I mean, we have a lot of cloud vendors. I work at Google now, but there are basic principles that everyone needs to know. And so I really enjoyed that introductory type of training, but I specialized in training developers how to use the cloud. And I've had a chance to do training at Google. Google has a good culture of what we call 20% projects. And I was asked if I could teach the first cohort with BDPA for the Cloud Academy. And we had a good time over a period of about 6 weeks. And some people are now Google Cloud certified. So hopefully that makes a big difference in their career. But I generally, with schooling, I majored in electrical engineering. I'm studying computer science right now at North Carolina A&T, HBCU. And we can get into more as we go along, but happy to be here.
Nice. And your computer science that you're studying right now at A&T, is that a master's or a doctorate?
Master's.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. HBCU love representing Miles today. Miles College, my HBCU. So
looks like similar colors.
Yeah, so Miles is purple and gold. I think
okay, so blue and gold.
Yeah, but they're cousins. So you mentioned a few things in there. They're good. I wanted to hit a lot of them, but I think it would be good just to ground everybody on what does cloud mean to you? Kind of give us the Raj definition of cloud and what it means.
Yeah, so I mean, the way I like to talk about cloud is at a very, very basic level. Because really cloud or cloud computing, you can think of it as just another layer of abstraction, right? If you thought about like when you first learned how to use like a computer, a real computer, no one really cared about what was inside per se, right? The first things were, could you cut it on? Did you know how to create a folder or make a file? Could you turn it off properly? like the basics, but you weren't counting the billions of transistors that were in like a CPU. All that stuff was abstracted away, and you just had a box, a monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse, that type of thing. But you had a computer. And so I think of the cloud as the very same thing. Instead of a motherboard where all those parts would connect in that desktop, you can think of Mother Earth, right? So if you think of a map on a flat sheet of paper, you have all the different continents. Well, all the cloud providers have what we call regions all over the world, where there are thousands and thousands of servers that exist in those regions, but you really don't have to worry about that. All that stuff is connected. And now the Mother Earth is like one giant motherboard, right? And you can get a username and password to that giant computer that we call the cloud. So really, it's just an abstraction of regular old computing. And that's, I think, what the mystery is. And so if you can get that concept, you can start very quickly, regardless of degree, experience. If you think about it just as like a computer, really it's a distributed computer, but if you keep it super basic, that's what I encourage everyone to do, because you can get started very quickly. You can usually get started for free, regardless of platform or vendor. And I've seen people time and time again learn that mystery and get started very quickly within big tech or their own business. It's really remarkable.
Yeah, cloud is, it's like it's, it's so much more accessible now. It's like it's ingrained into our lives. I think I pay $2-3 a month to get 50 gigs or 100 gigs, whatever, of Google Cloud or one of those clouds on my phone, and iCloud and all this stuff. Probably not even using it all, but it's there nonetheless. So I think it's gotten pretty connected to our personal lives, if you will. We're using some of the cloud technology that's available. So kind of going along. Go ahead.
Before we go to the next one, I want to use an analogy, because all this stuff, technically speaking, is what we call service-oriented architecture. But if you think about, I'm sure everyone has heard of the term the service industry. And if I could get someone to add into the chat, what's the service industry, or where have you experienced the service industry before? We usually think about like going into a restaurant, right? And so if you go into a restaurant, what's the first thing you do? If you want something to drink or a snack or a lunch, what do you do after you're seated?
You ask the server.
Yeah, you ask someone comes to serve you, and there's a particular menu that you can pick from. And all you need to do is pick those items, and for whatever reason, they show up at your table. And so you don't have to worry about where the dishwasher is, if the cups are clean, how the meal was prepared, what were the logistics to bring in all the food, who's actually cooking today. All those things are abstracted out. You just make the request, and they respond by bringing you what you've asked for. There's an agreement between the two, or there's a certain trust that you'll pay for it. But that's what we call service-oriented architecture. And so the cloud is the same exact thing. If you need a database, you can ask for one. If you need a virtual network setup, you can just ask for one. You don't have to necessarily build it yourself. All those bits and pieces are really done for you. You just simply make the request, and you put your building blocks together, and you have something. But go ahead.
That's a good way. I don't think I've ever heard the cloud broken down like that before. I just picture myself at a restaurant, but I've never equated that experience with cloud computing and the access we have to cloud technology. So
that's the mystery. It's the mystery.
Right.
You solve it, man. It's a very good future for you.
So let's talk about that a little bit. This mystery. Cloud is a much bigger part of our lives now. So how would you say cloud has maybe changed over the last 5 to 10 years? And then where do you see cloud going over the next 5 to 10 years?
Wow. So 5 to 10 years is like an eternity. I mean, I first heard of like AWS per se. Actually, there's some Google products. It wasn't called Google Cloud at the time, but there's some Google offerings that exist within Google Cloud now that I heard about back when I was still in college. So it was a very long time ago. But I think if I have to say 5 years, like 10 years, it was like so scary a topic. You didn't want to, because the thing is, to use it, there wasn't really a lot of education. There were no like classes, free training tutorials, all that stuff, YouTube videos. It was more like, if you want to use this, please enter in your credit card number and you're going to get a bill type of thing. So when
Yeah.
I first have heard of public cloud, it was like 2008, and I didn't want to touch it because I wasn't sure the type of bill I was going to get, right? So 4 years later, I took a risk and joined a buddy of mine at a consulting firm to do cloud. And so I wasted 4 years because of that fear. And so we were training, right? And so I would say over the last 5 years, training has been like a really, really big thing. And it's not training like folks that already have a PhD. It's really on the fundamental introductory level is the most popular training. Because if you think about it, all vendors have an incentive to make it easy, excuse me, or to lower the barrier of entry for everybody from any age to learn how to use their product, right? Their training pretty much is free everywhere. Whether it's Google, we have great training. You can get in, do labs for free. The other vendors have other training that's free as well. But we want the whole world to be able to use these giant computers, right? Because eventually, if you do that at scale, the companies can make money. So we don't want to make it hard to learn how to use cloud. So I think training and has been the biggest shift I've seen. But everything, another thing is the offerings. All the vendors have great offerings. If you look at Google, we've just added a gaming streaming service. So if you want to, say, for instance, like if you have a exercise bike, but you want your users to be able to play a game as they're exercising, you can stream that through Google Cloud. So it's just all these odds and ends that keep popping up over the last several years have been really, really interesting. You can think of them each as building blocks. But the biggest thing, and the reason probably for this call, I just want everyone to know that you don't need really any experience to start. If you just get started, Google it, I guess you could say, and reach out to me if you have to on LinkedIn. I could pass, I have time, or I could pass you along to someone else that can help. But you want to get started as soon as you can, because it's moving pretty fast. So the barrier of entry is really, really low to get started. I'll just say that.
Well, that's a good transition point to some things you mentioned earlier. So you mentioned you used to work at AWS, you're at Google now, but in both of those, you've put a good deal of work into training others on cloud, getting into it, even working with BDPA in our cloud academy. Talk a little bit more about some of the training you've done. How's the experience been? What are some of the strategies you put in place? But talk about some of the training you've done around cloud.
Sure. Well, it turns out that before I came on AWS, I had learned. I worked at a company called Booz Allen, and I was exposed to cloud. I'd never considered myself an IT person, right? I have an engineering degree, but never was good with, just didn't care too much about IT in general. But I had a buddy that was building servers. He worked for a school system, and we'd build racks and, use a screwdriver to put these big racks together and build servers and all these things. And then when I learned that I could make a virtual server in about 5 minutes, I just shared it with him because I thought it was cool. I felt like I learned something that he was doing every day. But when he tried it out and saw that he could save so much time, he fully converted over to it. He, over a period of 2 months, just taking his IT knowledge and applying that to public cloud, he was able to increase his salary by 5 times. It was very scary.
Right.
We thought we broke something. We didn't know what to do. So you go from making $35K or something to $180,000. Like, wow, what happened? And so that was the genesis of me trying to experiment on other folks to see if I can teach to get that same kind of result, right? So the deal was, I'd give free training, I would increase my skills as a trainer. This was all on my own. And then hopefully they would get a new job or get a promotion or something like that. And so after about doing that for about a couple of years, I got the call from AWS to do that very same exact thing for a 9 to 5, right? And so it was same thing, just whether it was an introductory class or a software development class on cloud, it was just taking it from first principles and just slowly building up. And really, it's using a lot of analogies. As I mentioned about the going to get lunch, I use that same thing in class, and just building folks' confidence. Because usually people have used a computer before, they know how to get online. They just need that bridge to show, okay, here's what you've been doing. You can do the same thing over here on this cloud thing.
Yeah.
And once you kind of do that, and then give them the resources that are already available for free online, then they can take it, right? I had a lady that was had been recently laid off from a kind of a legacy vendor. Because of cloud, they kind of got rid of her position, and so she retooled. And I happened to teach a big class in New York City in the financial district. We met after class, exchanged information, and within a few months, she got a new job with a cloud vendor, and she's actually a senior cloud architect at AWS right now.
Nice.
And so that's happened over and over again. I've had friends that I just introduced this to. We've just met after work in groups, and then now they're at Microsoft. There's probably 20 of them at AWS. Maybe some will come to Google, who knows? But it's that same thing, getting that hello world experience and then just building from there.
So just to maybe go a little bit deeper there. So let's say someone on the call today here says, hey, I want to get with Raj and figure out this cloud thing. What can they expect when they come into training with you? Maybe a training session or course, if you will.
Sure. Basically, of course, we probably have a talk, right? I usually pick my format is this. I usually encourage folks to get like a domain name, right? Just get a domain name they can practice with. And then whichever vendor they choose with, say we're going with Google Cloud, let's see what you can do to connect things to that domain name. Can we launch a simple kind of hello world website, right? That would introduce using like our domain name service. It would introduce using some of the networking tools. It would introduce using VMs, right? So we have product areas that cover that. Could you do that same thing maybe in a serverless fashion? So I'd introduce what the heck is serverless.
Yeah.
And there's ways to do that through, we have things like Kubernetes. We have different, I don't really want to get into all the buzzwords and the marketing terms, but basically launch the same thing different ways within the cloud and start to build the dexterity up as we go. And that's the same thing with AWS if you want to choose Azure, but that's usually how I do it. Launch a website, do something in Python, right? Introduce some APIs, explain what an SDK is, and do something super, super basic. And usually that works. They build a networking background. They learn about containers. They learn about serverless. They learn about a little bit of software development. And then they have enough where they can repeat that on their own and practice, right? And so that's been my strategy.
Nice.
And also, I would probably throw you in a Google Hangouts group or Google Chat group with all the other folks that have started from scratch over the years since 2014, right? So it introduced you to the group, and we can all be friends, and folks can teach each other. It's usually what we do.
Is there a pretty strong community, kind of going off what you were just saying, like a community of professionals or maybe learners for the sake of this conversation?
Everywhere, right? Like I said, more officially, there's Google products I could put you on in terms of just straight up cloud training. I think there's a Learn with Google. We can pass out the links or add it to the description of the YouTube video, but those are the links that, my official response would be to probably go through those, because you get access to more resources than just me. Happy to introduce myself and talk after this meeting and want to meet everyone on the call. But there are specific resources that I can send out for Google to take your journey. And so they have, like, while I'm sleeping, you can be doing stuff asynchronously and watching videos and doing labs and all those things. So, but either way, I think it's having some type of curator, right? You can have a curator that can show you where to look,
Yeah.
show you the bookmarks to make, and then you have others that are going on the journey with you. I haven't seen anyone yet that this hasn't been a successful path. I mean, I hate the term I really came up with, because just me seeing it was almost like an underground railroad for the digital age, really, because folks have really transformed. They're all making well into the six figures. I'm not saying that works for everyone, but everybody is doing super, super well.
That's exciting. So I think, one of the things organizations like BDPA, your NSBs, SHIPs, all these organizations out here, I think it's all about how do we find ways to educate people, give them information in a way that is receptive, but that ultimately sets them up, for the paths they want. And it sounds like you've at least, and your team of people around you have found a way to successfully do that that's effective. So we definitely got to hear about those things more, and make sure our members know how to take advantage of them. Absolutely.
Right. And there will be another BDPA Cloud Academy cohort this year, maybe a couple. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that at the end of how you can look for those opportunities. But you could see me again in a more long format.
Cool. I want to go back. So you work at Google. Google's obviously one of our world leaders when it comes to technology and kind of everything we do these days. What's Google specifically doing to invest in the cloud technology talent pipeline and keep that workforce diverse?
Yeah, so there's a goal from the leader of Google Cloud, I believe, to train 40 million people in cloud, right? So, what I've done has been with, 40 of my friends or thousands of people through, 9 to 5, but that's not 40 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if he's putting the full weight of Google Cloud behind training, because remember what I said earlier, we like to make differences for customers and transform their business with our technology, but we don't get paid unless folks use the technology. So I'm not going to say they're doing this for a financial perspective, but so there's goodwill in too. But if you think about it, we want folks to learn these products, and so we want to make it as easy as possible for anyone that wants to learn, as long as they have an internet connection. I'm sure we can send you a Chromebook. You can learn. So there shouldn't be any barrier for anyone in the world. So you want to be one of those 40 million to get that training for sure. So BDPA, we're investing in NSB, all different types of groups to get this information out there and to get folks trained. So like I said, they're sending me out there as a resource for free to do these types of trainings for organizations such as yourself. So, and I'm not the only one. There's hundreds of people like me that are there to facilitate this type of training. But to reach 40 million, really, it's through the internet, labs and all that stuff, videos, they're all there. We have stuff on Coursera that you can watch for free and the like. So everything is there. We just need to help people find out about it so they can take advantage of it.
Makes sense. So we have people on the call who work in the corporate sector. We may also have those who are in the startup world. So want to kind of give you an opportunity to give them some perspective around cloud implementation in their organization. So someone on here may be trying to lead or get ready to lead a cloud implementation in their organization, or someone may be getting ready to start a new business and just want to start from cloud from the jump. Just what's your thoughts around how organizations can effectively implement cloud infrastructure?
Well, at the organizational level, there's probably one or two people at least that's probably taking the individual journey, right? And so may already be a champion to help and teach others. So I don't think, more likely than not, there's already someone that's super curious or doing it. And you kind of want to grab them before they learn the information and go to another company, God forbid. But I would say, from the organizational level, you can work with any of the vendors, but we can take Google Cloud, for instance. We're more than willing to work with you to create kind of do some discovery to see exactly what your organization needs and to create a kind of curriculum or plan and add the resources to it to distribute to your organization, right? So there's lots of ways we can do that. And so reach out online to get started with that. But like I said, there's so much free material. That's probably a good place to start. But if you want to do it really at a corporate, individual, or for a corporate or organizational level, I would say reach out to the vendor of your choice. Hopefully it's Google. And if you want to do it directly with me, I can work with our training and cert team to get a plan set up for your organization.
And kind of going along those lines, what are some common mistakes you've seen when people are going through cloud implementations?
Okay, that's a great question. So here's the thing. Usually there's either someone that's paid as the training person at the org, and then they will get either free or pay for training from a company like Google. And where mistakes are made is that they don't do a good job really communicating the training opportunities to the organization. Maybe a SKU is purchased or a SKU is given for free, but you make mistakes if your folks aren't taking the training. Because the thing is, why could that be the case? Well, maybe you as an organization haven't provided the training time, right? So if they're doing 8 hours a day and there's free training, they could be in school, they could have family things at night to do that. So usually if you make time within the workday for that training and prioritize it, it will be consumed. But that's what I see. Some folks will get training, it's right there, or give it away, and then they haven't made the time or a priority for their folks to actually get the training done. So that's it.
So it sounds like it's not too complicated to get cloud implemented, but you need to make sure your people know how to use it.
And then have the space, right? The space to block off their calendar to do some of this stuff. And then to be incentivized to get certs and all those things.
And that's a great point there. Getting certifications, these trainings and everything we're thinking about. Are there any specific resources you recommend for people looking to get into cloud and thrive in the space?
Here's what I recommend. So it's almost like you can have folks, if you ask, hey, do you have a college degree? One answer could be yes or no, right? But you didn't ask what type of degree is it? It's an associate's degree, bachelor's, master's, PhD, JD, those things. It's you have a college degree. So that's what I suggest. The same thing with cloud. You want to get on the board, right? It doesn't matter the cert that you get, but you want to have the badge to say that you're cloud certified. So all the vendors will look at Google Cloud, has something that's at kind of the high level view, right? From a business perspective. Google, we have something called the Cloud Digital Leader. I'm not going to say it's easy, but I always suggest people get that first cert. And if you want to go on LinkedIn, you don't even have to say what it is. Just say Google Cloud Certified, right? That will start to change things from a career perspective. If it was AWS, they have something called Cloud Practitioner. I'm not sure what the Azure one is, but get that first level cert. And so you can be on the board, right? Is the most important thing. Usually if you're trying to get an upgrade in salary, just being certified at all usually gets you pretty close to someone that has a professional level cert. So I would just say get that entry level so you can say that you're cloud certified, in whichever vendor that you choose to go with. And once again, most of the training is free.
Free is always good. So one last question, and then I want to open up the floor to the audience to engage with you with any questions or comments they may have. So our last question, just, we talked about the BDPA Cloud Academy a little bit, so that's one thing that's definitely in the works. But just, is there anything else you would recommend for organizations like BDPA to consider or do to further educate people and make sure they're set up to succeed in the cloud space?
Well, first, I think BDPA is doing a really good job with, we piloted the the Cloud Academy. We have some improvements that we're going to make as a partnership, but that there, if you can get in, try to, because the amount of resources that BDPA has come up with in partnership with Google, I have not seen. I have not seen the level of content that we provide with any other Cloud Academy, even with what I was doing at AWS, to be honest. So that's really good. How do we scale that? I'm not too sure. We'll have to see. But I think the Academy right now is really good. How well is that advertised? I'm not sure. But folks have gotten certified, and hopefully they're making some career changes if that's what they're interested in. But I think it's just making awareness, doing things like this. There's more people than me that are willing to talk, and it can be officially or unofficially. So I think more communication that's live and in person with folks that have done it or folks that are in the industry is probably going to be the best.
Thank you for that. Definitely things to consider for our organization and others like it. So thank you for sharing today. I want to take this time to open up the floor to the audience. So if anyone has a question you would like to ask or a comment you would like to make, feel free to come off of mute and ask that question at this time. If you prefer I ask it for you, you can put your question in the chat, but the floor is open at this time.
I've scared them all away.
Anything from the audience? I think I see you, Lavelle. Can't hear you, but I see you.
So someone has a question about artificial intelligence. So there's something called narrow artificial intelligence and then general artificial intelligence. I think what folks are scared of is more the general case. But what's in what's available today is narrow AI. And so if you think about even with your phones, sometimes it gets in our way, the autocorrect. Well, that's a little bit of AI there and machine learning behind the scenes to, how does it really know? It's probably checking, not that it's reading all your messages, but it recognizes certain strings of characters and it suggests, something that could help you out so you have to type less. And so I think AI can be very, very useful in lots of use cases, and it's not something to be kind of terrified of. But I think we could put it to good use for sure. And it's a good industry to be in, especially if you're just starting out as a young software developer. AI is something to watch. Is there training available for Cloud Digital Leader cert? Sure. Let me look it up.
While you're looking that up, Raj, Lavelle, if you figured out your sound, we'll come back to you next. Okay, Raj.
All right, so I've placed a link to the training for the Google Cloud Digital Leader certification. There's a study guide. You want to look at that. There's a practice test. You want to do that. And so any of those entry-level certs, you want to treat it like a vocabulary test. So learn the general products. You don't have to know how to really use them, but kind of know what they're used for. Basics about billing and security, and you should be fine. What training would you suggest for product managers who lead teams? Cloud Digital Leader is good if you're trying to introduce maybe the benefits of a cloud hyperscaler to your team. I'd probably start with the Digital Leader cert.
All right, Lavelle.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Very good. Thank you for your talk today. Really appreciate it. Can you speak in terms of the time commitment that would be necessary to go through, say, the beginning training course for learning about cloud?
I've seen people, it depends on where you are in your career. Like, I don't know what you do in general. So if you have a lot of skills that you can transfer over,
Yes.
it may not take as long. If you're starting absolutely from scratch, you may want to commit kind of some time throughout the week for probably a couple of months to feel good. If you look at the material, it may say 6 months or something like that, or a year, but I don't think it really takes that long, right? So I think it's more of having the awareness that, wow, this is something I could possibly do. Let me follow the study guide for this entry level cert, and then each bullet of the study guide is going to have you go and read things or watch some videos, and you take notes, and then you want to take assessments, self-assessments along the way. For example, the Cloud Digital Leader Cert has an exam, a practice exam. So one thing you could do is just take the practice exam day one, right? So you can kind of get a diagnostic of where you're at. I always say face the demon, right?
Okay.
So it's better to get that slap in the face, and then you're like, wow, I really know what it's going to take I can focus my studies and things like that.
Okay.
I would say take some risk, right? So, if the cert costs $100, I can't remember what that cert costs, maybe save up $300, right? I'm just going to take it right today, or I'm going to take it after a few weeks of study just to see what the test is like. And then I'll go back, refocus my efforts, and then go pass the exam, right? So
Okay.
where I've seen is folks just put it off and put it off and put it off. I think it's better to take more risk and to move a little bit faster, right? I think
Okay.
the very first cert I took at AWS, I failed it, and it stung. But the thing is, I had a good awareness of what it would take to pass because I took the test.
Okay.
So if you do that, I think you'll be more successful. In-person training, or paying for training, or going to actual class, or signing up for a training that may be at your job just accelerates the process. Like, I've seen folks where I've taught a 3-day class on an entry-level cert, and they took it the day of the last day of class. They took the test and passed.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
So
Yeah.
it just depends, but it's very, don't procrastinate, or let the fear set in. It's not going to work for you.
Okay. Because I am Google certified. I need to renew, and I just want to go to that next level. And I was looking at the cloud computing.
Sure. Sounds like you're on your way.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Security. So a question about security in the cloud. Okay. So I just want to talk general real quick. And so sometimes when you look at cloud, so one thing, you may want to look at how NIST defines cloud, capital NIST, and just look up the definition of cloud there. And there's a lot of good stuff that talks about security, as well as other things. But if you look at cloud, you want to think of it as a shared responsibility for security, right? So there are levers that you, as the owner of your account, can set that can make your account more secure, or your resources more secure or less secure. And there are things on the cloud vendor side that it's their responsibility. For instance, a cloud vendor, if you look at Google Cloud, well, the physical security, you as a user need to know it exists, but that's not your responsibility. So controlling access to the facilities, the data centers, the physical security, and all that stuff. Me as a Googler, I can't even go to a data center myself. Even though I work at Google Cloud, I'm not allowed or authorized to go because all the customer data is there, right? So it's protected. So keeping the services, right? So if I think of a service like BigQuery, the service itself that's available to customers in different regions in the US and around the world, that service itself has to be protected by Google Cloud. If I, as a customer, decide to take my data and make it publicly available, then I'm making my data less secure. So it's a responsibility on both sides. There are good things you get with Google, like by default, the data is encrypted and things like that. But it's a shared responsibility.
Okay, I have a question from Mark.
Sure.
And he said, Rod, your quote, "This is the Underground Railroad for the digital age," really hit me. It nails the political and professional environment we are in right now. Can you say more about the opportunities in the cloud or data careers for people of color?
Sure thing. I was hesitant to say that phrase because I think I haven't heard anyone else say it, and I came up with it years ago. But I mean, put it out there. So, but truly, this has been the fastest way I've seen for folks, anybody, regardless of race, sexual orientation, whatever, to get a job in technology and do super, 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 super well, right? Because there's an advantage. There is a slight barrier of entry, right? I keep speaking about that mystery, that kind of keeps a lot of people out, right? But just with a little bit of knowledge, you can bust through. And once you do that, I think about it like this. I used to be, when I was in college, one of the jobs I had was to give like tours, right? I didn't know I wasn't responsible for building any of those buildings, but I knew enough to walk people around and say, hey, here's the history department, here's blank, blah, 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 blah. But that was an actual job, right? And so even at that level, just imagine if you take that analogy for this whole cloud computing paradigm. There are folks that will pay you to come to the organization and teach 10,000 people about the basics of cloud computing, right? You can make an industry of that. If you look at, there was a cloud education company that was purchased for over $1 billion, right? And one of their main focuses were giving that introductory level training. So I do think it's cloud, I started doing this in 2013, 2014, teaching others. We have to see where Web3 and crypto and all those things and the metaverse, I think that's the new piece, but that's going to sit on top of cloud. But time and time again, I think this is a good way. Yeah, Underground Railroad for the digital age. And the cool thing is, you can be white, you can be black, you can still be on this Underground Railroad. So it's all good, but definitely in this time, the folks I know today, man, this is the fastest way, I think, to get those good high-paying jobs, regardless of degree.
Thanks for that question, Mark. Have any other questions from the audience? I have another question from George in the chat. So how does the cloud handle backups and redundancies?
Yeah, so distributed computing in its nature has the infrastructure for redundant computing. So to keep the services afloat from a vendor level, we have stuff behind the scenes to keep the service up and running. When you use a particular service, you can choose to construct or configure or combine services in such a way where you have failover. You can set backups. Some services provide backups automatically. Some will you as the customer choose when to schedule your backups. It just depends. So if I look at a backup, if I have a huge critical database, I don't want a backup job being run on it at between 9 and 5 because that's when my business is running. So I want to have some control in when that backup is done, maybe at 3 a.m. So that type of thing. So you have control as a customer when you can choose to schedule things like backup. And then, if you look at Google Cloud, it's a global offering. And so you can have a version of your site in North America, in the East, and then maybe another duplicate version for if anything goes wrong in the Western part of the US. Maybe there's a natural disaster, and so you want to have some failover and things like that. So I would say there are ways to build. Some you get out of the box, some you have to elect to use. Anything else?
Thanks for that question, George. Anything else from the audience? The floor is open. So you did spark a question in my mind, but I do want to make sure I give others the opportunity. So I'll go ahead. So you did mention Web3, metaverse, NFTs, crypto, and all the big buzzwords right now. I know at the foundation of all this is blockchain technology. So what's the connection between blockchain, all the things we're hearing about now in the cloud? I know you said there's still some stuff to be discovered, but I guess what do we know at this point?
Yeah, so if you look at blockchain technology, it's the whole thing is about decentralization. So if you look at things like Bitcoin, it was the Bitcoin miners is really where the network is, right? So you can, all the folks around the world that are mining for Bitcoin allow the transactions for everyone else to be verified and added to the blockchain. And so that can go from Ethereum and other things like that. But if you look at what the blockchain provides is that ledger that's immutable. And so as a company, maybe you want the end result of what blockchain provides. Maybe it's the ledger, right? So maybe when you award degrees and someone gets their diploma or whatever, maybe you want to do that digitally. And then for authenticity, you want to have an element of the blockchain that verifies that this is an authentic degree. So you don't necessarily want to rely necessarily on miners mining for the crypto in their homes or whatever. So that's why I'm seeing things like the Ethereum protocol run on hyperscalers, right? So you can use the distributed computing part. That's where the cloud network and the VMs that you put all over the world. But they're, as a corporate institution, you can use that compute infrastructure to do the blockchain magic, right? Until you get the end result, but it's running on, it's decentralized, but within like the vendor, right? So I see it, working both ways, where we'll see more and more. And I'm not making any specific announcements about what Google is doing, but I just see blockchain, Web3 being a part of all the vendors going forward. And then you can say the same thing about the metaverse. That has to exist somewhere. And so exciting times ahead. So, and the thing is, remember, I guess, let me say this before the call ends. The barrier entry is really, really low. You want to get into it so you can use your ideas to build on top of this infrastructure and then use the infrastructure for global scalability. And if you want to turn it into a big business, do that. So if you think about the cool movie, I think it's called The Social Network. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg and his classmate, they got into a rift because Zuckerberg needed money, according to the movie, money to rent extra servers. But now that's, the barrier of entry is so low. Just imagine what the kids of today are going to be able to create using public cloud.
Very, very cool and interesting times ahead, and that we're in currently. So it's exciting. One last call to the audience. Any more questions or comments before we get ready to close? You just got asked, will you be presenting at the BDPA National Conference?
If I get invited. I'm actually a member, but we'll see. Happy to do it.
So that looks like that might be something we need to get in the works. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe if enough people on the call make enough noise, we can holler at the conference planning team and try to get Raj in Atlanta in August. So I would be more than happy to take that up to at least to get it to Tim, and we can get it to the right people and see if that's something we can make happen. Did get another question from Cedric. What are entry-level cloud salaries?
Depends. Are you going to be more of a developer or business person? I would say it's very possible to make 6 figures or close to or above in total compensation.
And for clarity, that's entry level?
Yes. Yeah.
Not
could be a little bit below. Could be a little bit below. But yeah, I've put it this way, a buddy of mine, not going to give any details, but he's 22, He's graduating in May. So would you consider that entry level?
Yep.
Just shy of 200,000.
Well, you heard it here, folks.
But
All
your
this boy to
your
go.
mileage may vary.
Right.
Mileage may vary, but don't sleep.
Absolutely. No, thanks for asking that question, Cedric. I think that's important to share with people when you're introducing any career path. What's the potential, the earning potential there, starting out and down the road. I think it's important to know that. So awesome. Anything else before we get ready to close? Great questions. Okay, I'm going to put a few links in the chat. So the first one here is Raj's LinkedIn profile. So if you wish to connect with Raj after today, that is the link to his LinkedIn profile. So definitely connect with Raj on LinkedIn and continue any conversations you would like. The next link here is the page where you can find all of our previous tech and career talks. So the recording from this talk will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and it will be on this page as well as our YouTube channel. I believe that's National BDPA on YouTube. So definitely check that out. And then the last link that I want to share with you all is for our BDPA conference. George referenced this in a question or two ago. So we will be in Atlanta this year, August 18th through the 20th. Be back in person. So excited about that. It will be hybrid. So if you can't make it there, there will be opportunities to connect virtually. But Atlanta, August 18th through the 20th, definitely go to the website there, bdpa.org/event/BDPACon 2022. And check out what we have going on, register, and we're excited to have you all there. So thank you all again for joining today. It's been a great conversation. Thank you, Raj, for coming and sharing with us. I don't think this will be the last time we hear from you in the BDPA world. So we're excited about that. Any closing comments, Raj?
Hey, thanks everyone. Reach out to me. Love to meet everybody. You can do it. Hit me up. I'm happy to help.
All right. And then if anyone is interested in opportunities at Google, we will be sharing the list of attendees with some representatives there. So there may be opportunities to connect with Google even further if you're interested. So
always.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great weekend and a great week until next time. Stay safe, stay blessed. Thank you.